Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, I'm Marge Atkinson, Webinar Coordinator for the Special Libraries Association Competitive Intelligence Division. Welcome to our webinar, Ready, Set, Compete. Learn how to increase your company's speed to intelligence now with Emmanuel Trench. We'd like to thank Aurora WDC for hosting our webinar. Before we start, I'd like to cover a few things. For those of you on the phone, your lines will be muted, and please do ask questions in the Q&A window and we will address them during and at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to use social media during and after the webinar. The Twitter hashtag for the webinar is hashtag SLACID, and Emmanuel's handle is at EpsterTrench, EPSTERTRENCHE. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Emmanuel Trench is VP of Marketing and Communications at ClearCI, a competitive intelligence software company that helps businesses get the insights they need to compete. Emmanuel received an MBA from Nova Southeastern University and has a Bachelor of Science in Communications and Marketing from Florida International University. Emmanuel has served as Diversity Chair for the Greater Fort Lauderdale Advertising Federation and has substantial experience in B2B marketing by working for brands like Wachovia, AT&T, and Ecopetrol out of Bogota, Colombia. Emmanuel?
Thank you so much, Marge. I'm really excited to be here with everybody. But before I get started, I want to first thank SLA's CI division for making me and ClearCI giving us the opportunity to share a concept that really helps put things into perspective, specifically about how important it is to create enterprise-wide intelligence. My approach to competitive intelligence has always been one with a marketing perspective, where time to market is extremely critical, competitive pricing is always a concern, and of course technology is helping marketers do so much more to connect with prospects and generate growth for our companies. So what I want to state is that it's really no longer about how big or how much cash you have anymore. The rules have changed because we're seeing startups go to market a lot faster and disrupt established industries because of the internet. And basically anyone with an idea and access to the internet can be either a threat, the next investment, or tomorrow's leading enterprise. So what I'd like to do is set the stage for the presentation today by thanking everyone for joining. I will give you a nice treat if you stick around for the presentation. At the end of the presentation, I will mail you, not email, but I will mail you a copy of our Deep Dive magazine, which is a new publication for forward-thinking intelligence leaders. So you'll have your copy at your desk at work or at home so that you can flip your fingers through it like the old time. Also, I'd like to thank you again, and we'll get started with the agenda. I'll be talking about what is speed to intelligence, and I'll share two critical rates every change agent or admin will have to consider in order to create healthy information flow. Also, I'll talk about two companies that were way too slow to compete. Both happen to be in technology because we do focus on helping companies with fast-moving markets, and technology is an obvious one. One of the companies I'll talk about is still in business, however, struggling tremendously to stay relevant and pretty much looking for a lifeline as we speak. The other company has already been acquired by a tech giant. I'll share 4 factors that will help you increase your speed to intelligence. These activities will help you look at your organization's fitness level as well as how to create healthy information flow. And then finally, I'll share how to create enterprise-wide intelligence, which is the goal for pretty much any speed to intelligence program. And at the end of the webinar, I'll make sure to save time for questions, and I'll provide you with the email address so that you can request a live copy of your Deep Dive magazine. So I'd like to start by saying that speed to intelligence is a concept that ClearCI created that's helping large organizations become agile, swift, and capable of capturing more opportunities while dodging risky situations and threats. The concept was born out of an idea we embraced very earlier in our company, and it basically says that companies must compete differently in an area that is so fast-moving and tech-driven, an area that's extremely social and chaotic for so many of us. Speed to intelligence is about keeping up with change and being able to use information to move quickly. This is what creates longevity and sustainability despite all of the uncertainty going on with the digital era. So what is driving change? Everyone seems to have an opinion, an assumption, or gut feel, but everyone also struggles to communicate the factors that are driving change. And sometimes most people don't even have the facts to prove their assumptions. So change is actually very hard to deal with. It's inevitable though, so we need to have better ways to monitor it so that we can best position our organizations for success. One thing I'd like to say is that basically there's so much to monitor out there. In working with our customers, we have seen both lean organizations as well as really complex structures. For both, the basics are still true. And this is a great graphic here showing what must be monitored across the board. And although we can use this as a baseline, I want to take it a step further and say that it's about the people in the organization, specifically about what do the people need to know to do their jobs better now, meaning making better decisions in their role every day. It's not all about high-level strategic tactics, although that's important, especially when you're supporting your executive management team and that's what you've been hired to do. But in this presentation, we're going to be talking more about enterprise-wide intelligence through speed to intelligence. Certainly, roles will be concerned with many of these factors that you see on the screen, but to strive for what we call complete competitive intelligence, which is actually very hard and I would say impossible, so we strive for it, it's important to look at things like societal change, new selling approaches, new tools, and disruptive technologies that may be impacting the overall business landscape. And that's how you'll be able to stay relevant. Monitoring the competitive landscape requires so much more than market research or competitive profiles covering some of this information that you see here. It needs to be more continuous and done at the tactical level too. So what that means is that sales reps, customer service leaders also need to be doing this in some way or another, even if it's to gain some visibility as to what really is driving performance. I really enjoy this graphic here, and we use it all the time when we try to communicate this concept of speed to intelligence, because it really is about creating a learning organization quickly. And as you see, awareness is really the key, is making sure that various departments, various business units and roles have the right information so they're aware of the situation at hand. Speed to intelligence has two rates that we consider the proactive rate and the reactive rate, very similar to a heart rate or a heartbeat. So what I'd like to do is talk very quickly about the proactive rate. The proactive rate is the steady heart rate. So this is where you're getting appropriate flow of information throughout the organization. So you're monitoring relative topics of concern, you're sharing information with other departments, you have identified clearly who needs that information, who are the beneficiaries, and you're actively turning information into intelligence and action. So that's proactive rate. This is really one of the recommended beginning points here, is so that you are able to perform accurately at the reactive rate. Okay, the reactive rate, I know it has a connotation for being bad, but it's actually just a reaction. Okay, so that you're able to perform in the reactive state. The reactive state is like an adrenaline moment or rush. So maybe something happened in the organization and everyone is pulling information collected or missing to try and react to a situation. Maybe a law changed, a new market entrant came about, or some company fails, maybe there's a new substitute or a new invention. These are all factors that require the organization to pull together, gather the information necessary to respond or react. So believe it or not, there are companies that work really well in the reactive state, but are not moving quickly enough to new opportunities and threats. And so it's not that proactive is better than reactive. You just have to be familiar with the concept so that your organization can move accordingly depending on the situation. Now, healthy information flow is like the bloodstream and making sure that the blood is able to get to critical parts of the organization. And so you want to make sure that you are feeding information and you have channels in place so that information can get to the right areas of the organization so that those departments can make the right decisions on a daily basis. That's where I say that it's really important to make it tactical and make it about the different roles. And I'll talk a little bit later about how to create enterprise intelligence in a more application and more examples. So right now, I know this is a lot of theory, but it's important to go through this so that you're able to understand technology's role in making sure that we have speed to intelligence. So what's the challenge with how information is consumed in large enterprises? We've been studying this for quite some time in working with our customers and doing research, and we have found that large organizations struggle tremendously with making sure that they have the right information. And this graphic to the left really does a justice in illustrating the challenge, and that there's so much information out there, but you only really need a specific type of information. So people spend a whole lot of time trying to sift through information, jumping from source to source, trying to collect information. And you could just imagine that this really does slow down your ability to compete and respond in either the proactive or the reactive rate. Likewise, on the right, you'll see what other departments experience, and it's pretty much the same thing. There's a lot of information out there, but these departments only care about specific things. And how do you, as an intelligence or an information management professional, provide them with that key information so that they can stay relevant in their roles today? And that's really the challenge, and that's what creates speed to intelligence for many organizations, is being able to address this challenge head on. So it's very easy now to understand, after looking at those two images, that uncertainty is created when both you have not enough information and you have too much information. And uncertainty is very important to address as a human dimension. Okay, it's not a corporate thing. It is a human feeling. And so that's why it goes back to the person, the individual, the role. What is it that we can do to provide them the information that they need at that moment to make better decisions? So no wonder why there is so much uncertainty about what's shaping the future because of all the change that's happening. No wonder we're struggling to make decisions and we can't validate our assumptions, and no wonder the feeling that we get as humans is just flat out frustrating. All of these things affect speed to intelligence. And what I want to do is talk very quickly about a company that is still in business and actually was a Fortune 500 company. I'm not talking about Blockbuster or Kodak because I think those are a little bit overplayed. We're pretty clear on why those companies struggled or are struggling still. But the first company I want to talk about sold their stock using this ticker symbol, and this is Radio Shack, which right now is going through a very difficult time. Recently, I think it was about 2 days ago, the New York Times reported that they're thinking about liquidating and filing for bankruptcy. And if you look at the company's history, I mean, 93-year-old company was a Fortune 500 company. What happened? And we wrote a blog article here at Clear CI recently about Radio Shack, and it got picked up in a lot of mediums and social media because it was just such a compelling story to see that such a successful company for so many years was not able to keep up with the times, given their important role in the technology world back in the 1995 to 2000 era. Basically, the digital era passed them by very quickly, and the marking point, the flag here, was 2000, the year 2000. This is when they switched the way that they changed the name of their New York Stock Exchange ticker, changed to the RSH ticker. And it just shows and illustrates very nicely that after the year 2000, they really lost their competitive edge. A lot was going on. You had companies coming into the marketplace like Amazon and eBay, which back in the beginning of the 2000s were extremely hot. Apple also changed the game with its retail strategy, and then of course Microsoft, Sony, and others followed. So, and then you start looking at, for example, the wireless business, and that one has been a doozy because there's so much change there too. So there's just competition, and they weren't able to keep up, and they kind of lost themselves. And this one I think is a very, very nice case study on the importance of staying relevant. Another company that traded their stock on the New York Stock Exchange was traded with this ticker symbol, GTW, and that is Gateway Computers. Famous for its value-priced PCs and once considered the leader in bringing the PC to American households, Gateway did so well with its famous cow-printed boxes. But the branding strategy wasn't really enough to keep their brand top of mind. In fact, so much change in their business as well. Now, the only American companies competing in their market is HP, Apple, and Dell. The thing is, like, laptops and tablets changed everything in their space. But the signs were there well before. Laptops became extremely affordable, and tablets came into the game and changed the way corporate people even rely on computing. A lot of people now use and prefer iPads to do their work. And so their retail strategies was also a stumbling block for them. They failed to compete with companies like Apple, who completely redefined the way retail is done, and they lost their relevance. We've learned by working with our customers across many industries that most people don't know what's driving change. And as a matter of fact, if you ask people how they spend their time at work, you're going to find out that they're spending their time stuck in meetings, answering questions, conducting ad hoc research requests. Some will even throw the term pressing. I'm working on a pressing initiative, or I'm providing some sort of strategic support, and there's no forward-thinking element to their role because they flat out don't have the time for it. So what's the challenge here when you're looking to create a competitive intelligence or speed to intelligence is that over time companies lose their competitive edge. So here's the question that I think everybody wants answered on this webinar is, what's the best way to manage speed to intelligence so that we're able to stay relevant and aware in our roles? Well, there are 4 key activities that directly impact your speed to intelligence. These 4 areas will dramatically change how people stay informed and use intelligence to make better decisions in their roles. So research, monitoring, organizing, and sharing of information, all of these 4 activities right now are mostly done manually or with wrong tools like email, or some are using a company's intranet to try and give people the information they need to compete. And unfortunately, it's very ineffective. So if you address these 4 areas as an information management or competitive intelligence professional, you're going to be able to increase your speed to intelligence. So these are 4 activities that I would like to go in more detail, because most of the traditional approaches have been very expensive to do in terms of research, and also very time-consuming. And you don't really have a way to automate research, but now there are lots of tools and platforms out there that will help you tap into traditional and non-traditional sources, such as social media and some of the more consumer or human intelligence sources. So the key with research is creating a platform that allows you to bring in the information in at the right time. And then, of course, monitoring that information over time using technology will allow you to see what's changing, especially if you have a clearly defined list of key intelligence topics that you want to monitor. Also, looking for new sources and making sure that you're able to tap into those and see how those change is extremely important in today's digital era. So many sources are popping up. You're talking about things like SlideShare, Quora, and others that provide a wealth of information that unfortunately we don't have the tools to be able to collect. So setting up page modification alerts and having a system for early warnings is extremely important and influential when you're doing this monitoring for the organization. Also, organizing information is an activity that tends to be very inefficient. It's important to have a system in place where you're able to filter and provide relevant information that's ready to analyze. Not everybody wants to spend their entire day collecting. We need to spend more time analyzing, and organization allows us that time to analyze how things are changing. Using a simple taxonomy framework is ideal, and making sure that you have things like department folders or project folders whenever there are some key things happening in your organization. And then finally, share the information, making it very easy to find it and use information. Dashboards are extremely helpful with this so that you are able to give individual roles a unique perspective as to what's going on in the competitive landscape as it relates to them. So we always recommend dashboards for that. They could be different for different roles and different business units. You can set them up so that it's by competitor so that you can get a very good idea of what may be impacting change. Also, when you are implementing enterprise intelligence, it's about creating readiness through awareness. And this graph illustrates very nicely how important it is to automate a lot of these four activities that I mentioned so that you're able to drive awareness across the organization. So, for example, most people start with monitoring manually their key topics of concern. And then later on, they start using some sort of technology to automate a lot of the research. And then people are spending time analyzing, drawing conclusions, so on and so forth. And what you find is that the level of awareness, as long as the reach is there, it helps with making better decisions every day in that particular role. In this particular case, we're talking about enterprise intelligence as a whole, and I like to always recommend to start with some sort of pilot program where you're implementing it within a team, and then understanding what are the key intelligence topics for that team, setting them up in the platform, understanding how they consume information, how do they conduct research, what sources are they relying on, and you'll be able to know how to scale that throughout the organization. Different formats to do that, and I can talk a little bit more about that towards the very end, given some of the experience, because we have some clients that focus more on sales. We also have some clients that are focused more on service type information management where they're servicing different business units. But there are obstacles when you're looking to implement enterprise intelligence, and the first one is really lack of resources. So most people end up doing something, but it's ineffective because they don't have the resources available. In addition, they don't have a champion or a series of champions that will help drive the initiative. And then, of course, technology and tools to help execute, because there's so much out there, so much information. You need a platform that's going to be able to empower you and your stakeholders to get that information over time. There are a lot of cultural constraints we have seen as well, where companies they need to change their way of thinking about how they use information and how they get information. So learning a new platform may be an obstacle, and making sure that right people are getting the information that they should be and are getting value from the platform. So cultural constraints are very difficult, and we've seen it across the board. It's really a matter of making sure that everybody understands the value they're going to get, and making sure that it's role specific so that everybody in their role is seeing that this platform is providing value in what they should be doing every day in terms of making decisions. I'd like to take this time, and if there's any questions, Marge?
Okay, yes, I have one. Can different departments have different speeds to intelligence?
That's a great question, and the answer to that is yes. Different departments have different needs, and the key is making sure that they're able to respond to the opportunities or threats quickly. And so every department will be threatened completely different, and so My experience, for example, with marketing departments, it's extremely important to monitor things like product launches for the competitors, crisis management, seeing how others respond. And so if those departments are able to move quickly to those things and have resolutions in place, it does improve their speed to intelligence. Also, there are certain habits and rituals that help improve your speed to intelligence, going back to the 4 activities drive speed to intelligence. If you are automating research and the collection of information and you're continuously monitoring, you're going to have a greater speed to intelligence. And it's, again, the ability to toggle between one speed rate, which is the proactive, or the reactive rate. It's not that one is better than the other. Sometimes it's not about being faster than the rest. It's sometimes about just responding in time. And that's really the whole point that I want to make, is about staying relevant and being timely to the situation.
Okay, thank you.
So it can seem somewhat overbearing when you're trying to create enterprise intelligence across the board. So you really want to start off, in my opinion, with a team. So address a department that you think that you'll be able to win over with this initiative. Strategic planning is a great one. Also marketing or product marketing is also great, because they tend to be on that borderline between sales and marketing as well as strategy, and they're very tactical too. So the product marketing folks are very good to kind of test and see how they can start to understand this concept of speed to intelligence. But it's really important in any type of program that you have very specific objectives in mind. And the first 3 that we always recommend is to keep things very simple. Is objective number 1, aim for clarity as much as possible by thinking about how can you give individuals visibility and perspective into how they can do their jobs better. Also, objective number 2 is improve information flow. Acknowledge how that department ties in with the decision-making of other departments, and then figure out how you can make that information flow in and out of that department. Because one of the biggest challenges that we've seen is departmental misalignment, where one department doesn't know what's happening in the other, or one department may know of an opportunity, but they don't communicate it with the other. And so being able to make sure that the information can flow from one to another is extremely important. And then also optimizing the program and always testing to make sure that people are using the information. There are milestones in place. There are reports going out. There are alerts. How are those alerts being received? What triggers can you set up so that they're able to detect certain factors in the marketplace a lot quicker? So optimization is also a key part of any program. And then, of course, starting small is key. Making sure that you work with one department and then scaling it out. So I want to take this time to answer some questions. Maybe we can go back to a slide if anybody wants to talk about any particular slide in more detail. I also want to give everybody the opportunity to send over an email to marketing@clearci.com, where we will be able to send you a deep dive magazine via mail. Just send us your mailing address and we can send that over to you. But we can use this time, Marge, to answer any further questions. I want to make sure that we had some more questions, some time for some more questions.
Okay, and thank you so much for offering the Deep Dive magazine. That's great. Here's a question. You mentioned intranets are ineffective, and I agree, but how do you go about making a convincing argument internally, as it seems the arguments fall on deaf ears most times because companies want to give it a go first with intranet SharePoint first before exploring third-party software. Have you seen any effective approaches by working with your clients?
Yes, and it starts off with selecting a pilot team that you can use to test that let's say a third-party solution would be an ideal way to go. First off, I think it's extremely important for anybody that's in this kind of field, competitive intelligence or information management, to embrace new technology and make sure that their superiors understand the powerful role that technology plays in information sharing. And the intranets of the world came about well before cloud computing. And unfortunately, the intranet back then was what met the need. And there was a different purpose for intranet. It was more for internal communication. When you're talking about, for example, competitive intelligence software platforms, it's more about external information and making sure that you're covering all of the different areas that we showed before, which is the market, the customers, the products, the marketplace, and the intranet will make it very hard to see that information and structure it. So what I encourage anybody to do that is trying to prove a point is to get in touch with a list of vendors that you would be able to help you prove your point. And there are plenty of platforms out there that will provide you with a demo and actually set up something for you. And I encourage you to also have your superiors get in touch with them in a conference call and have strategic conversations about how it will add value compared to what the situation is now using an intranet, for instance. So you'll have to do some comparison between the now and what could be by having your vendor of choice provide some sort of a demo that you could see how it will help your organization. So getting them in those conversations is extremely important.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there a way to measure speed to intelligence?
So speed to intelligence right now is a concept that we are currently developing. It's really a matter of toggling between the proactive and the reactive rate. Being able to make that kind of fluid transition between both is the area that we want to measure. So it's not so much about how fast are you going, but how swift are you in toggling between the proactive and the reactive rate. So making that switch is something that we've been trying to identify how to assess. So we have some things in place where we will be launching an assessment soon to better understand how can companies toggle between both rates and what are some of the rituals, habits of companies that are very good with managing healthy information flow, and hopefully provide some sort of a score that will help share and showcase what are some of the areas of opportunities to improve the way companies toggle between one and the other. Because remember, it's not about being faster than someone else. It's really about being able to respond and operate efficiently in those two situations. So what I would say to that question is, stay tuned. Continue to follow us. Follow us our blog. We do publish quite a bit on speed to intelligence, and as we get closer to finalizing the assessment, we will make it available to everyone.
Okay, thank you. And here's one. Does the recent Apple iCloud celebrity photo hack undermine the cloud security perceptions for prospective clients? How do you explain how it's safe and secure?
That's great. That's a great question. And we have some security protocols in place. And sometimes what will happen is that and we will do some testing to make sure that the encryption of the website servers, the encryption of your login information is working properly. We have technology in place that will mimic how you sign in to certain platforms, including ours. And when you sign into those platforms, we don't even know your password. So the machine does that, and then we also have some checks in place to make sure that your password does change over time, and making sure that if you are in the cloud and you have mobile access, we will add some additional security for mobile access, or for making sure that the systems communicate with each other in terms of your internal systems. So cloud computing overall, I would say, privacy is always a concern, and if even a company like Apple gets a breach, it really sets the stage for the importance of it. So we always try to stay informed as much as possible to what technologies are in place so that we can protect our customers.
Okay. You talk a lot about information. Where does human intelligence fit in your speed to intelligence scheme?
So human intelligence is an interesting one because we are strong advocates of, for example, collecting intelligence from salespeople. And oftentimes what we have done is tied into internal systems so that salespeople can provide that intelligence. In addition to that, we have some best practices in place to use social media to get more human intelligence. Specifically, for example, if you're in B2B, tapping into sources like LinkedIn or Quora to get some of that intelligence and identifying who are the folks that may be targets to approach and do some interviewing. So we help with finding who those targets could be. Also in monitoring different targets through Twitter, for instance, we have customers that will call us and say, I will be going to an event. I need to monitor the following Twitter accounts during that event. And what the software will do is basically pull in that information throughout the entire event. Let's say it's a trade show, and we will be able to show you who they interacted with, what associations do they have, and help you conduct a deeper dive and figure out who are what relationships should you be forming and what interviews should you be conducting to get more information about any particular key topic of concern. So Twitter is huge for helping us, helping our customers get some more primary intelligence through human intelligence and identifying what associations could mean, especially when you're retweeting things, and we can look at some trending to see, what are the retweets between this particular follower versus the other Twitter user during that event. And that's just an example for during events, but we've seen cases where we're able to follow Twitter over time, especially key executives. So part of the configuration process sometimes with our customers is, who do you want to follow as an executive, and we'll figure out where we can get information on them through things like Twitter and LinkedIn and others, and we start to compare across those sources and be able to show some trends of things that are being revealed.
Okay, that's great. What's the best approach to create speed to intelligence in my organization?
The best approach, and it really depends on what the expectation is from executive management, but I always say try to make it sales focused. That's usually you're going to get buy-in if you can make your enterprise intelligence program sales focused, meaning that you're going to do whatever it takes to drive revenue, minimize risk, add savings to the organization. I personally would recommend getting started with marketing because they do a very bad job with monitoring the competition at a competitive intelligence level. There's always focus on promotions, and I think the marketing team always could do a better job with competitive monitoring. So starting with a team and understanding their needs is, I think, the best approach, and showing what the value delivered has been over time, what kind of decision making are they doing after they've been on the program. Maybe they are spending a lot more time analyzing than going out and getting information. And so showing those time savings and finding out how you are addressing key areas of concern. Maybe there were some rumors or some assumptions that they had. And then when you get on the program and help them understand their competitive landscape better and see what's changing, go back and identify if you can help them meet those intelligence questions and answer them more accurately by providing reports, whether it be on a quarterly basis on those items. So I would say make it team-based first, and then talk about scaling it to different departments.
Okay, thank you. And then speaking of the executives, how involved do you executives have to be?
If you keep it team-based first, that executive at that team is really the person that you want to be your champion, if you will, your intelligence champion. The less executives in the very beginning, the better, because you're able to provide results. If you get one executive in that particular team to buy into your idea and your philosophies, then you're going to be able to prove your worth to the other executives, and you can get that executive to help. So I would start off with one initially. And then with time, everything regarding enterprise intelligence takes a lot of time. I have spoken to many customers who have been there, it's like 3-4 years in, and they're just now getting buy-in. So the initial stages were about understanding, what are the gaps of enterprise intelligence? What are some of the departmental misalignment? There was a lot of consulting that we had to do with them through our research and consulting division to make sure that they were best prepared for action and actually implementing some sort of program. And also the trust factor is huge. Getting your executives to trust you comes with showing results and showing that there are case studies out there that will allow you to do a better job with spreading intelligence across the enterprise.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. That seems to be all the questions we have. Unless anybody has any extra questions to add at the last minute, I'm not seeing any come across. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for this presentation. It was very insightful. Thanks again to Aurora WDC for sponsoring this webinar, and be sure to check our next webinar, Tuesday, October 21st, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Recharge, Revive, and Reengage How to Stay Sharp in Intelligence with Phil Britton, Manager of Competitor Insights and Market Share of Ulta Beauty. Thank you, everybody, for attending.